that. So I will
Facebook, YouTube, we're streaming, we're
admit
social.
everyone.
Oh my God.
Welcome everyone to Piano Tech
Welcome.
Radio Hour.
Yeah.
How you doing today? Good to see all your lovely faces.
Yeah. I love to see the whole lineup.
Yeah,
Hi, kid.
I always enjoy seeing these folks in other nations than my own as well. We got Raymond I see over there from South Africa, Clement
Yeah.
from Mauritius, Juan Schutis, Argentina. Yeah, and of course we have Pooja streaming in from India. I'm not sure if I see
Wow.
any.
So
I don't know
many
if I
people.
know the countries of some of these other people, but
So many humans.
yeah,
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to Piano Tech Radio Hour. And Ethan, will you introduce us?
yeah. So well, first off, yeah, this is being brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, bringing you cutting edge instruction from the best in the piano industry, from their homes and workshops to yours. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And today we're going to feature a guest, Adele Fandrich, who is an icon in the piano design in the industry. He's as I've come to know him over the years, just learned he's he takes responsibility for learning about things that need to be explored. And so seeing a dearth of great information about piano design, he's become one of the leading industry experts in that. And so we're happy to have him. And we will have an upcoming private masterclass with him. Was going to be today, but we've postponed it. Sorry for that. It's complicated times, of course. But that will be 2 weeks from now, October 3rd at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll do it an hour after our typical radio hour ends. And on that, we're going to talk about soundboard refurbishment using epoxy. But today, we're just going to chat with Dell, pick his brain, and ask him some questions.
So
So,
before you
welcome,
leave,
Dell.
welcome, Dell. Listen, Ethan, before you go there, I just want to say that private offline to me this week have been 3 or 4 emails saying, "Hey, man, do not miss Dell's masterclass. It's the greatest thing since sliced breads. It's not BS. It absolutely works. You know, go for it. You need to be there, and you need to tell a bunch of other people that this is effective. This is not BS. So get there."
Yeah. Yeah. And I can read an email later I got from someone who sent me, he's been doing this technique for years and says it
Yeah,
works like a charm. So I'll read
yeah,
that
yeah,
later though.
yeah.
We
Me
can,
too. Three or two or 3 or 4 of those actually.
awesome.
So good on you, Dell. Jeez.
Yeah. So Dell, I'm going to launch us off with the first question here. And I think I just like to get a little bit of background for everybody. Maybe some of you folks know it. It was always fascinating for me to learn it when I learned it. Tell us about the transition from being a piano technician, guy out there working in the field, tuning pianos, working for stores, into getting into piano design. How did that? Was it sudden? Was it a smooth transition? How did that happen?
Yeah.
It was a mistake, actually. I started out when I was about 17 years old, which is dates me as back in the very early 1960s. Um, I had a job working for a refinisher who also did pianos, and he, it was kind of a temporary thing. He hired me even though I was underage, and we showed up for work one day, and he wasn't there, and we're waiting around, and it was a scene just out of The Godfather. This long black limousine pulled up. This guy in this slick, shiny suit got out. Where the blankety blank blank is that blankety low life SOB? We don't know, sir. Well, you tell that If he don't show up with the money tonight, we're breaking legs. And he got back in his car and drove away, and we never saw the boss again. So I was out of a job and San Bernardino, California, and I went looking for work in the morning. It was very hot in the afternoon, so my brother was there, Daryl, who also was looking for steady work. But in the meantime, he was tuning pianos for the local Baldwin dealer, Steppen Piano and Organ Company. And so he had this little one-room kind of a workshop thing back in and it was cool. It was the building was air conditioned, so I went there in the afternoon just to get out of the heat, and I started fussing with these pianos. And pretty soon I'd figured out enough that I could do basic upright action refurbishing, as it was called then. I could make them play a little less bad and make them look a little bit better. And I kept doing this and started getting paid for it. And ultimately we got ourselves a bigger shop. And we bought a piano. It was a little 5-foot no-name something or other. And we rebuilt it, which is a whole story all by itself, about how I took all the strings off and put them in the dumpster, and then realized that, oh, those strings were all different sizes. And I had no idea what those sizes might be. So I went out to the dumpster, and the garbage truck is coming down the road, and I'm crawl inside the dumpster, and I'm hauling all these wires out so I can get it back in the shop and measure them. But we got the piano put together and miraculously sold it to a nightclub up in Lake Arrowhead. And even more miraculously, about 6 months later, Daryl comes down. He'd been up there tuning pianos. He's got this big smile on his face, and he says, "You know that piano we sold to what's the club up there?" "Yeah." What's wrong with it?" "Well, the place burned down last night and took everything with it." So that was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to that piano. But just over the years, I just got more and more involved in piano rebuilding. Didn't learn to tune at that point. Was drafted into the Army. Very quickly ran out and joined the Air Force. And 4 years later, got back out, and I was footloose and fancy free and didn't have any work to do. So I went up to Mendocino. Daryl had a little short time thing of reconditioning a bunch of pianos at the Humboldt State College. So I helped him with that. And eventually ended up in Portland working with him, and always as a rebuilder. So the 72 National Convention came along. I was scheduled to teach a class in grand piano hammer installation. And 3 or 4 months before the convention, somebody finally figured out that I was not a PTG member. "Oh, well, why not?" "Well, I don't tune." At the time, the Piano Hospital was going strong, and they waived the requirement for they let me in even though I wasn't legally blind.
Right.
And basically locked me in the back room and said, "You can come out when you can tune a piano."
Wow.
So 3 months later, I passed my exam as a full-fledged piano tuner, taught the class, got married, and haven't looked back since. But it's always mostly as a rebuilder. And then I went to work. There were some changes made in the Steinway dealership in Portland in the early 70s. And I ended up working for the new Steinway dealer with the condition that I would service and prep all of the new Steinway pianos coming in. Well, this was kind of a revelation to me because I got to work on the same model piano repeatedly.
And what year was this?
I think I joined that in about 74, 75.
Ooh.
Something like that.
Some fairly rocky Steinway.
Oh, they were horrible.
Yeah.
We literally rebuilt some of these things.
Trust me, I was working in
Yeah.
a warehouse of Steinways from 81 to 86.
And they were getting better by then.
Well, nominally better.
But
They,
we replaced pen blocks in new pianos,
oh,
replaced hammers,
Wow.
so do we.
relocated action stacks, removed capstans around, restrung many new.
Wow, you did? You moved capstans around
Oh yeah,
in the 70s, dude?
yeah, to get rid of 9 lead weights in a Model S or Model M rather.
Wow. You were deep. You were like, there was only one guy in LA that was even anywhere near there.
Yeah, it was. What do you do when you go to a customer who
Well,
she's a widow?
yeah.
She's a widow, and on his dying bed, he had wanted to buy her a Steinway Grand all their lives. He had a lot of health insurance, and he made her promise that when she collected the health insurance, that she would buy a Steinway Grand. So she did, and when I got involved, she couldn't play the piano. It hurt her. It hurt her fingers, and so I went to see her, and she was practically in tears. I mean, and so I thought, I measured down weight, and it was 52, 58, 48. It looked great. So what's the complaint? So I started to tune the piano, and by the time I got up into the I set a temperament, and by the time I got about halfway through, my fingers were sore, and I had to struggle to finish tuning this piano.
Wow.
And so there's something wrong here. So I pulled the action, lifted some keys up, and in the low bass, I was counting 9 leads
Oh my.
in the weights. In the sharps, on the lowest 3 sharps, there was a lead stuck in the front of the key, in front of the key bushing. It was a small one, but it was there.
Serious? Wow.
So I called the factory and I talked to somebody. I don't remember who. And they asked about down weight. I explained the down weight was fine. Well, this meets factory specs. There's nothing we can do about it. So that was my introduction into action geometry. At that time, nobody was doing anything that I could find.
Now, kids, you got to understand, these are apocalyptic stories. These are like beginning stories. It was like a dark frontier, right?
It was.
Like saying you were going to work on the geometry of a piano.
That was horrible.
Are you serious? Are you? What do you think you are, a factory?
Mm-hmm. Well, I relocated the capstans, and jeez, I made a little device so I could slide it back and forth.
Terrorist you were, Jesus.
But I had no idea what I was doing. I just figured it out as I went. By the time I got through with the piano, I had 4 leads in the lowest key.
Wow.
And diminished from that. And I actually put a few on the backside, the backside up in the treble to bring it back up.
Yeah.
Delivered the action, went through another quick tuning just to touch it up, and let the lady sit down to play. She played for about maybe 2 minutes, and she just sat there and wept. She was so ecstatic that she could finally play her piano.
And how can you ever get paid for that? You
can't. Well, Steinway certainly didn't pay us.
No, you can't. You can't get paid for that. You have to pay your heart.
But it was at that, it was through that transition when I was working on a lot of pianos, well-regarded pianos, and I kept finding the same acoustical problems in the same models time after time after time after time.
Yeah.
And at first I logged it out to my ineptness. I just wasn't skilled enough. I didn't have enough experience. And then I'd go to a convention and I'd listen to other people who I respected greatly, and I found they were having the same problems.
Yeah.
And they had tried all the things that I tried. They didn't have any other suggestions. And Steinway's approach was, well, you're just incompetent, and which may or may not have been true. I don't know, but
to some degree or another.
finally, I decided that no, these are not. They're not even quality control problems. These are fundamental design issues. So I thought, well, I'd like to learn something about design. So I canvassed the existing piano manufacturers, and I found out that no one was doing any piano design, with the exception of Baldwin was doing.
You mean no one in the no American maker?
No American manufacturers were doing piano design.
Wow.
In one case, I called Aeolian for a problem, and I thought, well, as long as I've got you on the phone, so I asked to speak to somebody in their design department. Well, sir, we don't have a design department. Oh, okay. How about could I speak to head of your head of engineering? Well, sir, we don't really have an engineering department. Oh, okay. How about your head technician? I'm sorry, sir. We do have somebody working on players. Now, this was Aeolian, which at the time was the largest piano manufacturer in the world. So
just a quick interjection there, just to get, and maybe you don't have the answer to it. At some point, they had to have an original design for the piano. Do you know where those things came from? Were they just kind of, was it just kind of pieced together copy of something else, or yeah?
Sure, they came from the 1920s, 1910s, 1930s. Weeded out a lot of them, and the machines kind of got picked up, but the design stagnated. And indeed, if you go to a NAMM show and you look at the different offerings there now, you see the same thing. I mean, you see a lot of homogeneity. The designs are so similar. They've got the same issues, the same problems. Some companies have learned to cope with the design issues a little better than others have, but I mean, we still have the same reverse hook bridges. We still have too many notes in the or too few notes in the bass sections. We still have gnarly bass tenor crossovers. We still have, a lot of the same acoustical problems that we've always had. We still have. So we haven't progressed a great deal. Anyway, Barb got a job in there in Central California. We moved to Sacramento, and I was able to take a year to just fuss around. And I would pick up an old free upright and pull a soundboard out and do weird and strange things to it. I did super thin soundboards. I did thick soundboards. I did lots of ribs. I did few ribs. I ruined a lot of pianos, some of which I still have the posts holding up my workbenches and things of that sort. But I did learn some of at least what seemed to me to be principles of piano design. And I also studied the pianos that I rebuilt. I would stop, and as I took pianos apart, I'd look at them and, why the hell did he do that? And I'd study. So I've learned a lot from people like Mathushek and Chickering and Kanabe and all these old designers that we dismiss with such contempt were really quite brilliant. And the more you study their work and the more you look at them and think about, oh, that's interesting, but no, think about what was going through his head when he conceived this. What was Malin trying to do when he did? What was Julius Bauer trying to do?
Yeah. And so it's bizarre that all these, quote, off-brand makers whose now pianos have basically no commercial value whatsoever, um, are being recognized for, wow, these guys were trying to shake some stuff up. Is
Well, I
that
don't
what
know
I'm?
if they're recognized by the mainstream yet. They certainly are by me. I will stop and study these what we think of as oddball pianos, and just you just kind of try to teleport yourself back, and you try to figure out, okay, this piano was done in 1910. What kinds of factory equipment did this factory use? They didn't have CNC machinery, so how it why and then why put yourself in the mind of the designer of this thing, and he did look like right next door, right next to me here. I have an 1888 Kanabe Grand, and it's one I resurrected. I got it in Memphis. The owner gave it to me rather than sell it because she thought that I would actually do something useful with it rather than just patch it up and sell it as junk. So I've rebuilt it a few years ago for the sole reason of it's a tri-level scale, and I've tuned a couple of pianos with a tri-level scale, but I had never actually worked on one. So I wanted to actually work on one. And
Can you just clarify, because I'm not sure, maybe some other people have the question, what would a tri-level scale be?
okay,
Yeah.
we're familiar with overstrung scales. The tenor scales are on one plane, and then the bass scale comes over the top of that. This has, I think it's a 5 or 6 unisons in the tenor that go between the normal tenor strings and the overstrung bass strings. And
Wow.
it has
I
a
mean, actually, unisons go between them.
yeah. There's 1, 2, 3. I wonder if I can. I don't know if I can do this or not. Let me see.
Nah,
This may or may not.
I wouldn't mess up your rig, dude.
Oh, it's all right.
Here he goes. Here he goes, everyone. We just might lose him.
Here he goes.
I played this piano, by the way. It
Maybe
sounds really good.
can you see that at all?
Let me spotlight you just a second here. Let's make you big. Okay, so I can see. Yeah.
Right there.
Okay.
There's 5 unisons of trichord wrapped strings that go over the tenor strings and go under the bass strings.
Wow.
And there's
Just 5.
There's a third bridge that is just behind the tenor bridge and just a little bit taller than the tenor bridge, and it's kind of fastened to it. And you know,
not the Steinway third bridge, right? Not right.
Not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. So anyway, if I was brave enough, I'd try to show you a better, more clear picture of it. But I wanted to know firsthand what it was like. Did I get that centered okay again?
Yeah.
Yep, you're good. Perfect.
Okay. I now understand why they did it, and I also understand why they no longer do it.
And quickly, why did they do it, and why do they no longer do it?
Well, the hammers on this piano are Ronson hammers with bacon felt.
Yeah.
So far, they've not been touched with a needle. And it has one of the smoothest bass to tenor transitions that I've encountered in a long time.
The transition is the big deal there.
It's almost completely musically transparent. And like I say, I have not done a bit of voicing on those hammers, nothing. So that's the upside. The downside is that third bridge that's stuck on the back of the tenor bridge is a horrible thing to work on. it was just crumbling. It was coming apart. So we had to make basically a new one. And getting all the little pieces aligned in there was not easy. So it's something that you can do in your workshop, but in production, it would be very, very difficult to do. And so I can understand why they would stop doing it. I think 1 or 2 years later, they had gone to a more normal transition bridge on this model.
So we aren't going to count on the questionable fidelity of phones and little teeny computer speakers. So, but do you hear a difference in the transition? You do, obviously, and it's beyond the hammer set. It's also the.
Yeah, well, I'm not really a pianist, so I listen to it as I tune it and as I fuss around and would normally do voicing. But as I tune the piano, yes, there are differences, but it's what I call musically transparent.
Yeah.
That pianists, we have our friend Wolfgang, who's a regional concert pianist, comes over and plays his piano. Well, he used to before COVID came along, and he would just stop by and play the piano just because he loves it so much. And he'll bring his music and he'll sit here and rehearse for a few hours. Others come by and just to play it because they like the sound of it. It has other features. It has the thinnest soundboard that I have encountered in a factory built piano. The board at the center is 6 millimeters thick. Wow. Steinway by contrast would be 9.
Wow.
I got a comment here from Facebook.
Yeah, please. Any more comments or questions for you, please?
It's actually just very direct to the situation. Joshua Jones commented on Facebook. He said he played this Kanabi last fall, and it's very nice. And yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that I have played this as well. It's a nice sounding piano. I don't remember specifically about the transition. I don't think I was like paying specific attention to that. Mm-hmm. But I also noticed, like with that one, you did the epoxy treatment on that piano as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and with these pianos, very interesting. I'll ask you, hey, when's the last time you tuned this? And you'll tell me it's been quite a while, and they usually sound really good. It's quite surprising. Yeah, go ahead, David.
What determined? Would you say it's a warm sound or a bright sound? Or probably warmer rather than brighter.
Well, I chose Ronson hammers with bacon felt because it's about the softest felt we can get right now. And I asked him to press them on the light side, and so it's a warmer sound. Which in a piano like this is something I try to do because I believe it's closer to what the original makers had in mind than what we typically encounter today.
We can, Del, do you think it's feasible to hop over there and just play through it? It might not do it justice, but some people are very interested in just hearing through the break, just play through those, a few notes before those 5 and then through it a few after and just hear.
I'll do it. I don't know how this is going to come off on
well, that's what I mean. Okay.
My computer microphone.
My ears are.
Can you go over there? Can you go over there with the? Yeah, he's. Let's see here. He's also in the distance. His microphone is on the.
That actually, even through, little teeny microphone stuff, sounds pretty good. So,
yeah, and I see what he's saying. I don't think he can hear us right now, but I think we can tell at least what you're saying is that the tonal consistency, it doesn't really change that much. You don't hear like a sudden shift between wound strings and plain wire strings.
That's
No.
the idea.
Well, yeah, that's awesome.
The transition comes from G sharp. The three transition string or 5 transition strings are from G sharp to C.
Del, can you talk about what's going on in the Chinese piano market now in terms of in terms of what's coming to the United States and what's actually
Before we shift to that, that's a great question. I just want to make sure we follow it up. So you said
Sorry.
why they did that to that piano, and then you said why they don't do it anymore. Was it specifically just about the bridge and how to handle the bridge? Did we
Yeah.
cover that, or
Well, it's a pain in the neck to build it.
Okay.
Some of that might be made easier today with more precise computer controlled drilling, but fabricating that and we did end up making a new bridge, even though we had the original to go by. It was still it took longer to do than just a normal bridge work, because you have little posts that have to fit very carefully between the unisons of the strings just below. And then you have to build that up to just the right height, because of course you have down bearing to worry about here too. Then the top, the bridge cap is rather thin. So how do you make the original had split quite badly? So how do we put that back together without it splitting? Okay, so we used a laminated bridge cap. Well, then that makes it difficult to notch. There were just a lot of steps involved that slowed us down. Admittedly, if you were doing this in production, and I am always amazed when I see production workers, a good one, at how fast and efficiently they work. But even so, it was a complicated process, and I think in the end you can do as well with competent string layout and just using a transition bridge, a standard transition bridge.
Got it. Thank you for going into some details there. David, great question. Can you just rephrase what you said?
Right before the show, I was saying that I deeply respect your kind of current knowledge of what's going on in the Chinese piano industry and the community. And so I wanted to know, what are the current kind of state of the art Chinese pianos that you can buy in this country for a reasonable price that will actually serve you as a decent instrument?
Well, I don't know that I can get to brands because I'm not that familiar with them currently. The Chinese, the better Chinese manufacturers have been learning to control wood moisture content. That for generations was a particular problem. I've been in factories where they assured me that, oh yes, absolutely, they have good conditioning rooms, so let's go see them. And you'll see something that looks like a series of garages with the doors all open and wood is stacked inside. And well, how are you controlling the moisture in these? And they'll come up with something or other, but then they open the doors at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the weather is 92 degrees and 90% humidity, and the doors stay open all day. It didn't matter what it started out in the morning. This is not competent wood moisture control, and that's in actually one of the better factories. Other factories have what they call conditioning rooms with no controls set up whatsoever. They think that that's good enough. You have room. This here, we keep our wood here. Okay, but what do you do to control moisture content? Well, we keep the wood in the room. So the better factories are figuring that out. I mean, Japan went that route back in the 60s. We got Japanese pianos with soundboards falling out and cracking and doing all kinds of weird things. And then we went through it again with the Koreans, the Horrigals. And, you know, they finally figured it out. And, you know, the Chinese are finally figuring that out too. The Chinese excel at automation in their better factories. They're doing things with CNC machinery that was never done in the U.S. You can see a skeleton a grand skeleton put together with the belly bracing put into just spectacularly beautiful dovetail joints. Well, it took the machine 5 minutes to do that.
Right.
That's not going to happen in another factory. Whether that makes this a better piano or not can be debated, but that kind of thing is stuff they do very, very well.
Wouldn't you say, though, that generally build quality raises the bar?
They're getting better at that. And you know, people who sell these pianos would be in a better position to comment than I am, because I don't sell them. The only time I get involved in anything is when there's a problem, and that biases things.
Yeah.
You know, you can sell 100 great pianos, and then one of them has a problem, and I get involved, and there's this and that, and so it's not fair for me to say, oh yeah, well they're all bad because I found this one bad piano.
Yeah. See, I prepare good high-end pianos for a dealer here, and every once in a while they'll have me prepare a high-end Chinese piano.
Mm-hmm.
And over the past, let's say 2 or 3 years, I have been surprised by what are called high-end Chinese pianos, that they're pretty darn good.
Yeah, they've been steadily improving. What I see lacking in all of the Asian pianos, and I include pianos from Japan, Korea, Indonesia, and China, is very little in the way of innovative thinking in terms of design.
Mm.
Even pianos that are introduced as brand new state-of-the-art designs, I look at them, well, it's certainly refined and it's a beautiful piano, but I don't understand where the state-of-the-art part comes in.
Give us an example of what you're thinking about when you think about that.
Well, look at Kawaii's Shiguru pianos.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastically built pianos. I mean, I don't know how carefully you would have to look at one of those pianos to find an assembly flaw or a materials flaw. They're impeccable. Right. But are they that much better than the Concert Grand of 50 years ago? They look the same scale. Well, that's because that's ideal. I don't think so. You look at the smaller pianos, you know, the bridge layouts are the same. They take the same tension drops at the low tenor. You just kind of go on and on. I see the same kinds of material, woods used in soundboards. Why are we still putting wood soundboards in pianos? To me, it's incomprehensible. The world running out of woods. Look at the fires we've had. Well, I hate to tell you this, but there are fires in Alaska. There's fires in northern Russia,
Siberia.
Siberia. What the illegal loggers haven't taken out, the fires are getting. So we have very limited resources, what we call musical grade resources left, but we're going to keep plugging away. Okay, well, laminated soundboards finally, and I don't know if I'm to blame or if I can take some tiny little bit of credit for it. More and more companies are building fairly good pianos with laminated soundboards.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted to see that. It should have been done 40 years ago. Well, it was done. I'm not sure it was done very well. But we've moved beyond the Kimball laminated box crate pianos. And
oh my God.
Yeah, it was sort of the problem as you've explained before, and we might have talked about this before on a previous episode, but just to refresh, your philosophy on that is that, well, they introduced laminated soundboards in the lower quality pianos, and so everything was lower quality, including the laminated soundboard. And so then the laminated soundboard got a bad rap. If they would have introduced it in the higher quality pianos, they would have put more time and effort into doing that, and it might have been great.
Yeah, you look at the soundboards that Hyundai has been using. Hylun has been using. They're good boards, and yes, they're laminated, but they're good soundboards.
They have crown and bearing.
Yeah, and they're more stable, and they don't crack, and they have a lot of advantages to them. But that's only a stopgap. We should be using a lot more composites in pianos than we're using. I've written an article on, several actually. The idea is, where do we go from here? Pianos are heavier than they need to be. They're bulkier than they need to be. So I don't see much in the way of innovative, creative design coming out of any of these companies. There's a few guys in Europe that are doing some outstanding work. You can buy a flat-strung piano now, patterned after the Barenboim piano. Palello in France has built a couple of flat-strung pianos. Why don't we see more of this? The flat-strung layout has lots to offer. We don't use it now because back in the 1870s, Steinway came along with this big, powerful, overstrung instrument, and because of their incredible manufacturing capabilities and marketing capabilities, they just kind of buried everybody else. But if you spend any time rebuilding a Chickering flat-strung concert grand of that time, which I have, with a modern scale and a decent action and hammers, that is a fantastic instrument by anybody's standards. And it solves some problems. It's not exactly the same as a Steinway, but it's a gorgeous instrument in its own right. So we've homogenized the piano to a great extent. And when I look at Chinese pianos, I see just more of that, more homogenization. And I'd like to see that change.
Yeah, it seems to me like what you're characterizing as innovative, I think you would know when you see it, because it would almost also be disruptive to the industry. Like, you see these things happening in other industries, they disrupt the industry because it's new, it makes people think differently, maybe even changes how people do things, materials, whatnot. Example might be Uber, for Uber disrupts the taxi industry, right? So there's not much going on with pianos like that.
That's right. And that's what I'm saying. So what could disrupt the piano industry? What could possibly
Well, I don't think anything is
Um,
going to revolutionize it. But for example, and this goes back to a hobby horse of mine that I've been promoting on and off for many years. Um, your client has a condominium in downtown Seattle. Uh, it only cost him about $18 million. So, these people are obviously not cash poor. But you go into the condominium and they've got maybe 1,000 square feet, which is not very big. Our house here is, I don't know, maybe 2,400, something like that. So I have room for this piano. This thing's big. It's wide. It's bulky. It's fat. So your client says, "I'd like a better piano for my condominium. Well, what do you have?" Well, I want something good. So what are my choices? Well, your choices are, well, of course, Steinway makes the Model S. Is there anyone here who's ever recommended the Model S to anybody? And why not? Because it's a terrible piano. So
certainly not one made in the last 50 years.
what are their options? Well, you can't go shopping for a small piano, grand piano in America. You go shopping for a short grand piano. So what if we revisioned that? What if we said, okay, what's the problem here? Well, the problem is excessive width and bulk and weight. So instead of making that piano 59 or 60 inches wide, let's make it 54 inches wide. Instead of making the rim 11 or 12 inches deep, let's make it maximum 10. I have a design in my computer here of a 5'5" grand that takes up less floor space than the Yongchang Samek ubiquitous 4'11". It's an immensely better, well, I haven't built it, so I say it has the potential for being a much, much better performing piano, and it actually takes up less space. So would that be a big change to the industry? I don't know. Neither does anybody else.
Let me go through some of the comments here. That's great to hear. Well, first of all, I'll jump back to one I saw previously. Let me get here. Eric Johnson, I think Yamaha Avant Grand is rather disruptive. Carbon fiber soundboards from Steingraber. Some things that he mentioned. David Boyce said, Lindner, the Ripon subsidiary, set up in Ireland in the early 1960s.
I love them.
Making lightweight upright pianos, and sounded good and were stable, but the materials available then let them down, particularly some plastics. But yeah, we've got a lot of different plastics nowadays. Mark Campbell, have there been any developments to the scaling of smaller grands, especially in the back scale? Releasing the soundboard, etc.
There has been some. There's been a reluctance to deal with the back scale because we're still convinced that we've got to have the low bass strings have to be as long as possible. But there's been some steps forward in that regard. I've removed the bass bridge cantilevers on a number of short pianos, and I don't know that it started to trend yet, but I think people are starting to look at it.
Let me continue here. Kevin Clem said, and the Avant Grand won't last with years and years of playing. Eric Johnson disagreed. Kevin Clem, you know how. Pianos don't necessarily last years and years. Without substantial work, hammers, bushings, restringing. Kevin Clem said one of the venues in Ohio has one. It's Avant Grand. It's 5 years old. It doesn't feel anywhere near the same to play. I believe it won't last as long as a normal piano. Might be more maintenance. And I want to jump back to this comment.
Well, and maintenance is another issue.
Right.
You know, we bought a TV set in here. Now, when I first started, when we bought our first color television set, we had to fuss with it a lot. It needed alignment, it needed fussing with, it needed all color corrections and all this stuff. Well, we put up with it because we had to. And now, I mean, I've got that thing that hangs on the wall up there. I bought it, took it out of the box, hung it up, plugged it in. It works. It works. It works. It works. It works. Eventually, I'll have to replace it, but it's not going to need any maintenance at all. All right. I buy a piano and I'm warned right up front that, oh yeah, it needs to be tuned 3-4 times a year. It needs constant maintenance. Why? If we, you know, I made my comment about why aren't we using composites and soundboards? Why aren't we using composites and actions? Much more stable, much more, much less prone to needing periodic servicing. The regulation in a Wessel Nickel Gross action, once it's in there, it's good. I would assume the same thing is true with Kawai's action. I haven't worked on a lot of Kawai pianos, but that's a great action. And why in the world other companies are not emulating that is just flat beyond me. It makes no sense.
We got a comment from Facebook here. Or actually, let me jump back to the one I wanted to. Yoshi put an interesting link to an article several minutes ago. There's a Yangtze River piano has been selected to be one of the appointed pianos used for the, 16th International Tchaikovsky Competition. And I'm not aware, I don't have any familiarity with Yangtze, so Yangtze River. Kevin Clem, that was his last comment there. Oh, and I have a comment from Facebook, and we're getting out of time here, but Joshua Jones said, do you have the same thoughts on Yamaha's borrowing conservatory grants? Any innovating going on there? Oh wait, sorry, there's more to the comment. Do you have the same thoughts on Yamaha's borrowing Bosendorfer design in their new conservatory grants? Any innovating going on there?
I'm not familiar enough with them to make a.
Are you familiar with the new V series Bosendorf?
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with them to comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
They're fairly startling pianos.
I'll jump in here because we're getting short on time. We're not out yet, but just to observe that there's a lot to talk about. And Dell has, as you can tell, just so much interesting information that is, in some ways, it's research generated. In some ways, it's just inquiry, right? You know, just having the curiosity to experiment and explore. So even though we're running out of time, we appreciate you being here and taking the time, and definitely encourage people to join the Epoxy on Soundboards Masterclass. It's going to be on October 3rd at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And just also I can mention briefly, we can try this again today. We tried it last week.
Where's my dog?
Oh yeah, we have to get Java come in and give a guest appearance as well. Java usually jumps in on the masterclass sessions as well.
You'll have to get him. Here. Come here, big puppy. Here.
And that's Barbara, by the way. You mentioned her earlier. That's Dell's wife. She's also quite integral to Dell's productivity.
Come here. There you go.
Appreciate her.
Here you go.
You've got to get him to the other side.
Yeah. Good boy. Come here.
He's a big dog. He's not going to just jump up on your lap. There he is. Hi, Java.
There's my puppy.
He's a big baby.
Oh, you want that?
Yeah.
No, no treats. No treats. I'm cool right now. I'm having my moment. He's having his 15 minutes of fame right now.
Yeah. he's
I
he's 10 years old now, and he's slowly going blind. But he's basically a sniffer, so he does pretty well all on his own just by sniffing stuff out.
So he's still grooving. He's still
Oh yeah,
grooving.
it hasn't slowed him down much.
Awesome.
He's a
So
great
Del, again, thank you so much
Yep.
for giving us this hour and being a fascinating human being
Yeah.
in our little nerdy world. I love it. Just love it. Signing off. Ethan, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, we got a few minutes left too. I'll take a minute to
Do
thank
we?
everybody that's helping behind the scenes. Yeah, and it's just
Good.
enough time that I want to share this via screen share that I didn't get to share last week. This is what I've been mentioning about where you can meet other piano technicians and have a chat. And you're all invited. I just put the link in the Zoom chat there to come check it out. But you're given this little man you can walk around as, or woman, although it's pretty gender neutral. You can not do much but sit down and hang out. But the cool thing you can do is when there's other individuals walking around, when you get close to them, you can have a private conversation with the people that you're close to. So it's interesting. It's very new technology. And I encourage you all to just jump on there today for a few minutes and see if there's anybody you want to chat with. It might be kind of fun. I'm testing this out if it's useful for us. So I may not have access to this beyond the end of the month. So if you want to jump on and give it a shot and tell me what you think, but it might be a nice place to have a little after party and talk to whoever you like, however you like in this virtual space. So go ahead and check that out. And beyond that, in the chat previously, Pooja put some links for you. There's a link for the feedback form. There's a link to join Del Fandrich's masterclass. You can either pay a one-off fee, and then you'll have live access and the recording for, in perpetuity to review, or you can subscribe for $79 a month for Craftsman subscription. You'll be able to access that live and the recording along with our entire library of recordings. It's a pretty good deal. It's probably your best deal right there. And next week, I'm really excited. We're having a follow-up. Eric Johnson came on previously, brought up this very interesting topic of regulating and thinking about voicing for the shift pedal and the very nuanced ways that you can think about the shift pedal in various positions. And we're going to have a piano player who is very well versed in techniques that he uses with the shift pedal, and his name is Fandrich Chu. We put a K on his name there in the chat. It's misspelled. Excellent pianist. I've been reviewing his recordings. I mean, he's incredible. So it's a real privilege to have him join us next week, along with Eric, to have some discussion about special usage of the shift pedal and the voicing that goes along with that.
Well, just in the perception of an artist of touch. It's always fascinating to ask an artist, just unalloyed, what's your scene with touch? Tell me how you like a piano to sound, to feel. And try to have them say it in their own words so we can get some kind of an insight. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I met with Fandrich a few days ago, and he's just such a kind gentleman, very, of course, very talented, but very humble. He has a little presentation that he often gives. He's going to give us a few slides from that on his concept of using that shift pedal. And Eric is going to graciously participate in that conversation as well. And they're kind of old friends, so it should be a very informative conversation.
It's very embarrassing to tune and voice a piano for a recording and have them sit down, and the first thing that the pianist does is uses a shift pedal, and the piano sounds absolutely horrible because you didn't do that. one time only. After that, I learned.
Mm. You always
Yeah.
fail, brother. Always fail upward.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Del, for joining us today. We will see you again in 2 weeks. And I know you
Okay.
got a lot of work over there. Stay healthy and good luck on I think you're having a design project you're working on right now, which is exciting. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks and everybody else.
Okay.
Thank you all
See you,
very
Dale.
much.
Thanks so much, man.
All right. Good to see you
See ya.
again.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.